In this lesson, we're going to learn how to solve inequalities and graph them on a number line. An inequality is like an equation, kind of has that word equal in it, but instead of being equal, it's going to be inequality or unequal. These are inequalities have one of these symbols in them. And when you solve an inequality, it's going to be just like solving an equation. You're still going to do add to undo subtract and do subtract to undo add. The big things about your answer are that in your final answer, the variable should always be on the left. Part of the reason why we always want the variable to be on the left is because that's going to help us graph it on a number line. The first example of an inequality I want to look at is 5 is less than or equal to x plus 2. We're going to try to solve that for x and then graph it on a number line. If I look at the variable is adding 2, so to undo adding 2, we need to subtract 2 on each side. That way the adding 2 and the subtracting 2 cancel out, and we're left with 3 is less than or equal to x. That is our final answer, except final answers, we always need to have the variable on the left. We want the variable first. So we're going to flip-flop where the x and the 3 are. But if we flip-flop where the x and the 3 are, we also need to flip-flop which way the inequality symbol goes. So our final answer is x is greater than or equal to 3. We want to graph that on a number line. A number line is sort of half of the coordinate plane. A lot of times when we make our numbered lines, we put 0 in the middle. For me, you don't always need to put 0 in the middle, but it will work if you do that. I'll give you an example on the next one of a way that you could not put 0 in the middle. Because really with a number line, it goes forever in both directions, so you could start the number line wherever you want and just pick up from there. We want to try to graph x is greater than or equal to 3. So we want to shade numbers that are greater than or equal to 3. That's what our answer says. It says numbers that are greater than or equal to 3. So we definitely want to include 3 on our graph. And since it does say or equal to, that's why we have a dot filled in. And I'm either going to shade all the numbers on the left, or I'm going to shade all the numbers on the right. In this case, since we want the numbers that are greater than 3, numbers like 4 and 5 are greater than 3, so we're going to shade to the right. This is a graph of all the numbers that are greater than or equal to 3. Now let's try to solve this one. X minus 3 is greater than 7. It's just like solving an equation. To undo the subtraction, we need to add on both sides. The subtraction and addition cancel each other out, and we're left with x is greater than 10. The nice thing about this answer is that the x is already first. It's already on the left side, so we don't need to change anything. But we do need to graph it on a number line. Now this time I don't want to start with 0 right in the middle. It would be possible to start at 0 and count all the way up to 10, but it would take a lot of markings. Since 10 is going to be the important number here, I'm going to put 10 right in the middle. And I want at least 2 numbers on each side. That's my requirement of you. If you are going to skip right to the important number, I'd like at least 2 numbers that are bigger than 10 and at least two numbers that are less than 10 on your number line. So we are supposed to shade numbers that are greater than 10. This time it doesn't include 10. We're still going to put our circle at 10, but we're not going to fill it in. If the question has an or equal to, like our first example, then we'll fill the circle in. If it does not have the or equal to, then we're going to leave the circle open, because we're not including 10. We're only shading numbers that are greater than 10, not equal to 10. Then we have to decide numbers that are greater than 10. Are those going to be numbers on the left or numbers on the right? 8 and 9, those are not greater than 10, but 11 and 12 are. So we're going to shade numbers to the right. Those are the numbers that are greater than 10. I would like you to try a couple of these on your own. I want you to try to solve and graph those two inequalities. Make sure you show your work. Pause the video, try to solve those two inequalities, and start it again after you've had a chance to solve it. Here are answers for you to compare to. On the first one, you should have subtracted 2 from both sides, and then flip it around to get a is less than or equal to 7. We can skip right to 7, but make sure we have 2 numbers on each side. It does say or equal to, so we want to fill the circle in. And this time we're shading numbers that are less than or equal to 7, so numbers on the left. For the second one, we need to add 14 to both sides. So we get t is less than 114. The variable is already on the left, so we don't need to change it at all. This is definitely a case where we don't want to start at 0. We want to skip right to 114. But my requirement is that you have at least 2 numbers on each side. It does not include 114. There's no or equal to. We just want to shade numbers that are strictly less than 114. So numbers to the left, like 112 and 113. We also want to be able to change things from words to inequalities and back. The 4 inequalities that we have are is greater than, is less than, is greater than or equal to, and is less than or equal to. But there are some other ways to say those symbols. This information is in your textbook in a chart on page 320, but I'd like you to pause the video and write down all of those different ways to say each inequality. You should have all of those written down, and we're going to use those to try to do a couple examples. The first one says 4 times a number is no more than 3 times that number plus 8. 4 times a number. We can use any variable we want. We could use x. I'm going to use n. Is no more than. So this is kind of like a negative or an opposite. It's no more than. Well, more than would be greater than, but this is no more than, so it's not that one. It's the other one. It's is less than or equal to. More than would be just greater than. Is no more than means is less than or equal to. And that was on our chart. Is no more than meant that symbol, and is less than or equal to. So 4 times a number is no more than 3 times that number. So that's telling me I need to use the same variable again. 3 times that number plus 8. This inequality seems a little bit tougher to solve, but it's still going to be one step. We need to make sure to get all the n's on one side of the equation, so we can subtract 3n from both sides. And the nice thing is that 4n minus 3n is just n. So there's our answer. N is less than or equal to 8. The directions didn't specify if they wanted a graph. I'd like you to try to graph it. See if you can graph this inequality on a number line on your own, and make sure that you're shading the right way, and either filling in the circle or not filling in the circle, whichever one's appropriate. Try to graph it on your own. Your graph should have a filled in circle at 8, and you should be shading numbers less than 8. So numbers to the left. Second example, a number decreased by 8 is at most 14. We have to remember all the way back to chapter 3, a number decreased by 8, that's going to mean subtraction. A number decreased by 8 is at most. You might want to look at the notes that you took. If it is at most, that means it's either going to be less than or equal to. It is at most 14. Now that the inequality is written, we can see that n is being subtracted 8. To undo subtracting, we need to add 8 to both sides. All that's left on the first side is n is less than or equal to 22. The variable is already on the left-hand side, so that is a final answer. Try to graph that answer on a number line, and we'll compare graphs in just a minute. Your graph should have a filled-in circle at 22, and you should be shading numbers that are less than it. Alright, your homework that is due tomorrow is on page 321. You can work on that for the rest of class.